The white guest in the $1,000 suit looked down at Keisha Williams with disgust. He deliberately dropped his coffee cup on the freshly mopped marble floor, dark liquid spreading across her night's work. "She'll get it," he told his companion, not bothering to lower his voice. "That's what they're for." Keisha kept her eyes down, reaching for her mop. At 3:47 a.m. in Manhattan's most exclusive hotel, she was invisible to everyone who mattered. Her rubber-soled shoes whispered against polished stone while guests' Italian leather clicked with authority. The security guard followed her movements on his monitor, eyes narrowed with suspicion despite her employee badge hanging clearly visible. Through her earbuds, a Japanese podcast discussed business etiquette. Jennifer Hayes, the assistant manager, swept past without acknowledging Keisha's quiet, "Good morning." The woman pushing that squeaky cleaning cart held secrets no one would ever imagine. Have you ever been invisible in a place where you work every day? 6 hours later, chaos erupted in the Meridian Grand's marble lobby. Hiroshi Tanaka, CEO of Japan's third-largest tech conglomerate, stood rigid beside his luggage. His flight had landed 3 hours early. The $2.8 billion merger meeting had been moved to 8 a.m. No Japanese interpreter would be available until 10 a.m. General Manager Richard Thornton paced frantically, his phone pressed to his ear. "What do you mean nobody's available? This is a $2.8 billion deal." Tanaka spoke rapidly in Japanese to his assistant, his voice carrying frustration and disappointment. The words cut through the morning air like a blade. Jennifer Hayes approached Thornton with fake concern. "Maybe we should call that Japanese restaurant downtown. They might know someone who speaks the language." The security guard eyed Tanaka's assistant suspiciously, demanding to search his briefcase for the second time. At the front desk, the clerk spoke slowly and loudly to Tanaka in English, as if volume could bridge the language gap. "Sir, do you understand? Breakfast is 7 to 9. Keisha finished replacing trash liners in the executive lounge. She was 30 minutes past her shift end, but the morning crew hadn't arrived. As she pushed her cart toward the service elevator, Tanaka's voice reached her ears. In perfect Japanese, he was saying, "These Americans show no respect. How can we trust them with our legacy? They cannot even arrange basic communication. This merger was a mistake." Keisha stopped. Her heart raced. Years of staying invisible had taught her to keep walking, to mind her own business, to remember her place. But those words... She understood every syllable. She looked at the service elevator, then at the executive area where Tanaka stood isolated in his frustration. The same marble floors she had mopped for 3 years stretched between them like an ocean. Thornton's voice cracked with desperation. "Sir, please, just give us 2 more hours. We'll find someone qualified." Keisha took a deep breath. Her hand trembled as she left her cleaning cart beside the elevator. For the first time in 3 years, she walked toward the executive area as herself, not as the invisible woman who cleaned it. Keisha approached slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to return to the safety of invisibility. She stopped 3 feet from Tanaka and bowed slightly the proper 15-degree angle for business introductions. In fluent Japanese, she spoke with perfect pronunciation and formal honorifics. "Tanaka-san, I deeply apologize for this inexcusable inconvenience. May I humbly assist while proper interpretation services are arranged?" The lobby fell silent. Tanaka's eyes widened. His assistant's briefcase slipped from his hand, hitting the marble with a sharp crack. Thornton's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips, his mouth falling open in shock. Jennifer Hayes stopped mid-conversation, her face twisting from surprise to disbelief to something darker. "Where did she learn that?" she whispered loudly to the front desk clerk. "Did she even graduate high school?" The security guards exchanged glances that said the same thing. Did the cleaning lady just speak perfect Japanese? David Mitchell, the lead attorney for the American side, had just walked through the glass doors. He took one look at Keisha standing in the executive area, and his face hardened. "What is housekeeping doing here?" A white guest nearby nudged his friend. "I didn't know they taught that in the ghetto." But Tanaka stepped forward, his posture shifting from frustration to respect. In Japanese, he responded, "Your honorific usage is impeccable. Do you understand, Keigo?" "Yes, Tanaka-san. I studied your business culture extensively. Would you prefer to discuss the morning's arrangements in Japanese while we resolve this situation?" Keisha's hands remained steady as she explained the hotel's amenities in flawless Japanese. She discussed the cultural differences between American directness and Japanese indirect communication. When Tanaka tested her with complex business terminology, market penetration, regulatory frameworks, intellectual property, she responded without hesitation. "You understand the concept of nemawashi?" Tanaka asked, using a term that had no direct English translation. The behind-the-scenes consensus building that happens before formal meetings. It's essential for maintaining way group harmony while allowing face-saving adjustments to proposals. Tanaka's assistant pulled out his phone and started recording. He had never seen an American demonstrate such deep cultural understanding. Jennifer's face flushed red. She marched over to Thornton and hissed, "This is insane. She's housekeeping staff." "What if she makes an error? What do we really know about her background?" David Mitchell crossed his arms. "I'm not comfortable with someone like her handling confidential information. This is highly irregular." A corporate executive's voice crackled through Thornton's phone. "Are you seriously considering using the cleaning lady for a billion-dollar negotiation?" But something had shifted in the marble lobby. Hotel staff gathered at the edges, whispering. The front desk clerk stopped pretending to work on her computer. Even the skeptical security guard leaned forward to watch. Keisha explained the proper protocol for business card exchange, demonstrated the correct way to accept gifts with both hands, and described why American small talk could be interpreted as disrespectful time-wasting in Japanese business culture. "Your knowledge extends beyond language," Tanaka observed. "You understand our heart." "Language is just the beginning, Tanaka-san. True communication requires understanding the spirit behind the words." For 30 seconds, nobody moved. The morning sun streamed through the hotel's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The woman who had been invisible for 3 years stood in its center, no longer hidden. Jennifer's whisper cut through the silence. "This can't be real." David Mitchell shook his head. "Lucky coincidence. Anyone can memorize a few phrases." But Tanaka bowed, a gesture of respect that made every person in the lobby understand they were witnessing something extraordinary. "Miss Williams," Thornton finally managed, "how did you—" The question hung in the air like a challenge. 3 years of being ignored, of having her intelligence dismissed, of being seen as nothing more than her uniform, all of it condensed into this single moment. Keisha looked around the lobby at the faces staring at her. Some showed genuine amazement. Others revealed the uncomfortable realization that they had been wrong about someone they saw every day. She had spent years learning to be invisible. Now, for the first time, she was being seen. But the hardest test was yet to come. As Keisha continued her conversation with Tanaka, explaining the nuances of Japanese business etiquette, her mind drifted to another marble floor, one her mother had scrubbed 20 years ago. She was 12 when she first accompanied her parents to their night-cleaning jobs. Ethiopian immigrants, they worked 3 office buildings to support their family. She watched her father struggle to communicate with building managers, saw her mother's eyes fill with tears when tenants made cruel comments about those people. "They think we're stupid because we're black and our English isn't perfect," her mother had whispered in Amharic one night. "But ignorance isn't about language, my daughter. It's about the heart." That's when Keisha started learning. Spanish for the building supervisors, French for the diplomatic families in their neighborhood, Japanese from library books and online courses, staying up after homework to master pronunciation. Every language she conquered meant one less family would suffer like hers had. At community college, she was the only black student in the linguistics program. Her professor pulled her aside after the first semester. "Languages are for people with different career paths, Keisha. Maybe you should consider something more practical." She graduated with a 4.0 GPA anyway, but practical meant working nights to put her 3 younger siblings through school. It meant hiding her university acceptance letter when she couldn't afford the transfer. It meant watching dreams crumble under the weight of reality. Job interviews ended the moment employers saw her address. Store security followed her when she bought expensive textbooks. Teachers assumed she was in the wrong classroom when she attended language workshops. "Every language I learned meant one less family would suffer like mine did," she thought, as Tanaka nodded approvingly at her explanation of gift-giving protocols. But in America, they only see the uniform, never the mind wearing it. Her worn multilingual dictionary sat hidden in her cleaning cart, pages marked with notes in 5 languages, letters from immigrant families she'd helped tucked between chapters. A community college certificate folded carefully in her locker, never seen by anyone who mattered. "Your understanding runs deep," Tanaka was saying. "This knowledge, where did it come from?" Keisha looked at him. This powerful man who saw her intelligence instead of her uniform. For the first time in years, someone was asking about her mind, not her mop. "From necessity, Tanaka-san, and from hope." The lobby's calm shattered when Tanaka's phone rang. He answered in rapid Japanese, his face growing tense. The Tokyo Board of Directors was demanding an emergency conference call about the merger terms, complex technical negotiations, right now. Thornton's panic returned in full force. "The professional interpreter won't be here for 90 minutes. We can't make the Tokyo Board wait." Jennifer seized her moment, pulling Thornton aside with theatrical concern. "This is insane, Richard. She's housekeeping staff. What if she makes an error? We're talking about confidential corporate information." David Mitchell nodded vigorously. "I'm not comfortable with someone like her handling sensitive legal discussions. What do we really know about her background? These people often exaggerate their abilities." The words hit Keisha like physical blows. These people. Someone like her. The same dismissive language she'd heard her entire life, wrapped in professional concern. But Tanaka was looking at her with something she'd never seen from a white colleague. Genuine trust. In Japanese, he said quietly, "I believe in your ability, young lady. Will you help us?" Keisha's hands trembled slightly. 20 years of being told she didn't belong, didn't have the right credentials, wasn't the right type of person for important things. The voice in her head whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe you should stay invisible." Then she remembered her mother's words. "They will try to make you small. Don't help them." "I'll do my best, Tanaka-san." For 20 minutes, Keisha became the bridge between 2 corporate worlds. The Tokyo Board discussed market capitalization, due diligence procedures, regulatory compliance frameworks. She translated seamlessly in both directions, never missing a technical term or cultural nuance. When the Tokyo executives used the concept of nemawashi, she explained to the Americans, "They're referring to the consensus-building process that must happen before formal agreements. In Japanese business culture, the real decisions happen in informal conversations." She prevented a major misunderstanding when the American team's aggressive timeline was interpreted as disrespectful. "They're not trying to rush you," she explained to Tokyo in Japanese. "American business culture values efficiency, but they respect your thoughtful approach." Thornton took notes furiously, his expression shifting from desperation to growing admiration. Even Jennifer watched from the corner, her disapproval wavering into grudging acknowledgement. The hotel staff had gathered in the lobby's periphery housekeeping, front desk, maintenance watching one of their own handle a billion-dollar negotiation with the fluency of a seasoned diplomat. When the call ended, The Tokyo board had agreed to proceed with the morning meeting. The deal was back on track. David Mitchell immediately dismissed the success. Lucky guess. Anyone can repeat words they've heard before. Jennifer's professional mask slipped. We still need a real interpreter for the important meetings. This was just basic communication. A white hotel guest whispered to his companion, affirmative action gone too far. But Tanaka stood and bowed formally to Keisha, a gesture that made everyone in the lobby freeze. In Japanese business culture, this level of respect was reserved for equals. Exceptional work, he said in English, making sure everyone could understand. You captured not just words, but meaning. Keisha's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. For 20 minutes, she had been exactly who she was meant to be. Not invisible, not limited by others' assumptions. Just herself. But she could feel the resistance building, the whispers, the doubt, the determination to put her back in her place. The real test was coming. Jennifer Hayes waited exactly 3 minutes before cornering Thornton near the executive elevators. Her voice carried the practiced authority of someone who knew how to make discrimination sound professional. Richard, we need to talk. Privately. She led him into his office, closing the door with deliberate firmness. Keisha was emptying the trash outside when Jennifer's voice rose just loud enough to carry through the thin walls. She's housekeeping staff, Richard. This isn't about her background, but we can't have someone with no credentials representing the Meridian Grand. What do we really know about her? Did she even finish high school? These people often exaggerate their abilities to get ahead. Thornton's response was muffled, but Jennifer's voice grew sharper. I'm thinking about liability, about corporate policy. We have procedures for a reason. David Mitchell's arrival made everything worse. His expensive shoes clicked against the marble as he joined the impromptu meeting. His voice carried clearly. I won't risk my career on some diversity hire playing interpreter. We need someone with proper credentials, someone reliable. You know how these people are, probably learned some phrases online and thinks she's qualified. Keisha's hands shook as she slowly emptied the wastepaper basket. 3 years of invisible nights, and now she was hearing exactly what they thought of her. The phrases cut deep. These people. Diversity hire. Not qualified. Jennifer's voice took on a conspiratorial tone. The black maid playing professional translator? Richard, what if she makes a mistake? This is what happens when we lower standards. Through the glass walls, Keisha could see them pointing in her direction. Jennifer's animated gestures. David's dismissive head shakes. Thornton looked uncomfortable but not defending her. She caught her reflection in the executive bathroom mirror, the same one she'd cleaned hundreds of times. Her uniform looked shabby against the marble and gold fixtures. For a moment, she saw herself through their eyes, just another black woman who didn't belong in their world. The voices in her head joined the chorus from the office. Maybe they're right. Maybe you don't belong here. Maybe you should go back to being invisible. She remembered every job interview that ended with "We'll call you" when they saw her address. Every store security guard who followed her through aisles. Every teacher who assumed she was in the wrong classroom. Her mother's face appeared in the mirror beside her own weathered hands, tired eyes but unbroken spirit. They will try to make you small, my daughter. Don't help them. Your worth isn't determined by their blindness. Keisha straightened her shoulders. She thought about the immigrant families in her building who depended on her translations. Her siblings counted on her to keep working so they could stay in school. The 20 minutes when she had been exactly who she was meant to be. Jennifer emerged from the office with David, both looking satisfied. They walked past Keisha as if she didn't exist. Problem solved, Jennifer muttered to David. Back to proper protocols. But as they passed, Keisha made a decision. She wouldn't argue. She wouldn't defend herself with words they'd never believe. She would do what she'd always done. Prove herself through excellence. Because in 30 minutes, When the certified interpreter arrived and the real negotiations began, she had a feeling their proper protocols wouldn't be enough. The hotel's future, Tanaka's trust, and 1,800 American jobs hung in the balance. And sometimes, the person everyone underestimates becomes exactly who the moment demands. She finished emptying the trash and walked toward the service elevator. But this time, she carried herself differently. This time, she was ready. The professional interpreter arrived at exactly 9:30 a.m., wheeling a black briefcase and wearing the confident smile of someone with certified credentials. James Peterson had 20 years of experience and charged $300 per hour. Jennifer beamed with relief. Thank God. Finally, a real professional. David Mitchell shook Peterson's hand enthusiastically. At least now we have someone qualified to handle serious business. Keisha watched from her position near the coffee station, refilling sugar dispensers that didn't need refilling. The certified interpreter commanded immediate respect, expensive suit, proper credentials, the right skin color. But 10 minutes into the contract review session, cracks began to show. Tanaka's legal team had arrived with complex amendments involving intellectual property rights and employee retention clauses. The specialized legal terminology challenged Peterson immediately. He stumbled over the Japanese concept of shinrai, deep institutional trust that couldn't be directly translated. He's talking about confidence? Trust? Something like that, Peterson offered weakly. Tanaka's expression darkened. His assistant leaned forward, whispering urgently in rapid Japanese about the misinterpretation. The American legal team grew frustrated with the halting translations. This is taking forever, David muttered. What's the holdup? Peterson missed a crucial nuance about intellectual property sharing that made Tanaka visibly uncomfortable. The CEO spoke sharply to his assistant in Japanese. He doesn't understand the legal implications. This could destroy the entire framework we've built. From her position near the coffee station, Keisha caught every word. The certified interpreter was translating the technical terms correctly, but missing the cultural and legal context that gave them meaning. She hesitated. Jennifer and David had made their opinions clear. This wasn't her place. She should stay invisible. But 1,800 jobs were at stake. Keisha approached Thornton quietly. Excuse me, sir. The interpreter missed something important about the intellectual property clause. Jennifer's head snapped around. What are you still doing here? This is a closed meeting. David's face reddened. This is ridiculous. We're paying for a professional. We don't need commentary from housekeeping. But Thornton, remembering the morning's success, held up his hand. What did he miss? Tanaka-san is concerned about the sharing of core technologies. The interpreter translated shinrai as simple trust. But in this legal context, it means the institutional bond that makes companies willing to share their most valuable assets. Without that understanding, the Americans sound like they're asking for trade secrets without offering equivalent protection. Peterson's face flushed. I understood the general meaning. Tanaka had been listening carefully. In English, he said, Miss Williams is correct. The interpretation was technically accurate but culturally meaningless. The room fell silent. The certified professional had been corrected by the hotel cleaning lady. Just beginner's luck, David muttered, but his conviction was shaking. Anyone can get lucky once, Jennifer added, but she was avoiding eye contact. Thornton made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Keisha, would you assist Mr. Peterson for the remainder of the session? This is highly irregular, David protested, but Tanaka nodded approvingly. Two perspectives will ensure nothing is lost in translation. For the next hour, Keisha worked alongside the certified interpreter, catching nuances Peterson missed and explaining cultural contexts that prevented misunderstandings. When Peterson struggled with regional dialect from Tanaka's Osaka-based legal advisor, Keisha seamlessly bridged the gap. The contract language was revised successfully, deal momentum restored. The American legal team, despite their prejudices, found themselves grateful for insights they wouldn't have gained otherwise. Peterson quietly asked Keisha for her contact information. "You should consider certification. Your cultural knowledge is exceptional." Jennifer and David exchanged uncomfortable glances. Their proper protocols had nearly derailed a billion-dollar deal. But Keisha knew this was just the beginning. The real test was coming. During the coffee break, Thornton approached Keisha for the first time in 3 years with direct eye contact and purpose. He had watched her work alongside the certified interpreter, seen her prevent multiple misunderstandings that could have cost millions. "Keisha," he said, using her name deliberately, "I need to speak with you." To speak. They walked to a quiet corner of the executive lounge, a space she had only entered to clean. Now she sat in one of the leather chairs she had vacuumed countless times. "I've been in hospitality for 20 years, Thornton began, his voice carrying genuine remorse. "I've worked with certified interpreters from top agencies in New York, London, Tokyo. Your cultural understanding surpasses them all." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "I was wrong about you, completely wrong, and I apologize." Jennifer watched from across the room, her jaw tight with disapproval. She marched over before Keisha could respond. "Richard, this sets a dangerous precedent. What's next? Letting maintenance handle accounting? We have protocols for a reason." Her words revealed everything. The deep-seated belief that certain jobs belong to certain people, that crossing those lines threatened the natural order. But Thornton had made his decision. He pulled out his phone and called corporate headquarters, putting the speaker on. "I need to introduce someone who saved our most important deal this year," he told the regional executives. "Keisha Williams, our new Cultural Services Coordinator." The corporate executives were initially skeptical, their voices carrying the same doubt Keisha had heard all morning. But when Thornton explained how she had bridged a billion-dollar gap that certified professionals had missed, their tone shifted. Tanaka, who had been observing quietly, stepped forward. "If I may address your corporate team," he said formally, "Miss Williams demonstrates cultural intelligence that is rare in international business. I formally request her involvement in all future negotiations." He turned to Keisha with genuine respect. "I would be honored to write a recommendation letter for any position you seek. My assistant will connect with you professionally." The corporate executives, hearing a billionaire CEO's endorsement, quickly aligned their perspective. "We'll fast-track her promotion paperwork," one promised. Jennifer's resistance crumbled into bitter acceptance. "This won't last once corporate sees the big picture," she muttered to David Mitchell. But David had watched Keisha save legal complications he hadn't even noticed. His objections had become whispers. "I still think proper credentials matter," he said weakly. Thornton handed Keisha a temporary executive badge, the plastic card that would grant her access to floors she had only cleaned. "Your desk will be in the business center. We'll have business cards printed immediately." "Cultural Services Coordinator," he said, making the title official. "Salary commensurate with your value to this organization." Keisha's hands trembled as she accepted the badge. The same hands that had held mops and spray bottles now held the key to executive floors. She thought of her mother's weathered fingers, her father's bent back, her siblings counting on her to keep their dreams alive. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't invisible. But as she called her mother to share the news, her voice breaking with tears of disbelief and gratitude, she knew the real test was still coming. The Tokyo board meeting that afternoon would determine whether this recognition was real or just a temporary anomaly in a system designed to keep people like her in their place. After the successful morning sessions, Tanaka found Keisha sitting alone in the hotel's small rooftop garden. She was reviewing notes, preparing for the afternoon's crucial board meeting. For the first time, she occupied guest space instead of cleaning it. "May I join you?" he asked in English, then switched to Japanese. "Or would you prefer to speak in your beautiful Japanese?" She smiled, the first genuine smile she'd allowed herself all day. Either language is fine, Tanaka-san. He settled into the chair across from her, his formal business posture relaxing into something more human. My father was a factory worker in post-war Japan, he began quietly. When I started business school, professors looked at me with the same doubt I saw in their eyes today. Keisha's pen stopped moving. She hadn't expected this vulnerability from a billionaire CEO. They questioned whether someone from my background belonged in their world. Success comes not from where you start, but from refusing to accept others' limitations on you. The afternoon sun filtered through the garden's glass panels, creating patterns of light that shifted as clouds moved overhead. Neither of them spoke for a moment, comfortable in the shared understanding of being underestimated. In Ethiopia, we have a concept called tizita, Keisha offered. It's bittersweet nostalgia mixed with hope remembering struggle while believing in possibility. Tanaka nodded thoughtfully. In Japan, we call it gammon perseverance through hardship. My daughter faces similar challenges in tech. Gender discrimination in Tokyo is... He shook his head. She reminds me that progress requires people willing to be first. He pulled out his phone, showing a photo of a young woman in a lab coat. She's developing AI applications. Very few people take her seriously. Keisha shared a picture of her 3 siblings in graduation gowns. Community college graduation last spring. I've been working nights to keep them in school. Your sacrifice honors your family, he said with deep respect. Then his tone became businesslike again. My company is expanding into African markets. We need cultural consultants who understand both worlds. I can sponsor your interpreter certification full scholarship for degree completion. Starting salary would be $65,000. The offer hung in the air like a bridge to a different life, but Tanaka's honesty came with it. The position requires moving to Atlanta, and success will require proving yourself repeatedly. Some people will never accept you regardless of your achievements. He handed her his business card with both hands, the highest honor in Japanese culture. She responded with a handwritten thank you note in perfect Japanese calligraphy. This afternoon's board meeting will determine everything, he said quietly. Are you ready? Keisha looked at the city skyline stretching beyond the garden, the same view she had seen through windows she'd cleaned for 3 years. Now she was seeing it as someone with possibilities. I'm ready, Tanaka-san. At 2 p.m., the hotel's largest conference room buzzed with tension. 20 Japanese executives filled the video screens mounted around the room. Board members, regional directors, and legal advisors connecting from Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto. The stakes couldn't be higher. $2.8 billion, 2,800 American jobs, and the future of international cooperation. But opposition was building in Tokyo. Shareholders were questioning American cultural sensitivity after recent trade disputes. The merger hung by a thread. The professional interpretation team had returned with reinforcements, 3 certified interpreters with impressive credentials. David Mitchell stood beside them like a guardian of proper protocol. Finally, we have adequate professional coverage, he announced pointedly, glancing at Keisha with barely concealed irritation. Jennifer nodded approvingly. Now we can handle this meeting with appropriate standards. But when Thornton asked Keisha to lead the interpretation team, Jennifer's mask slipped completely. This has gone too far, Richard. She's housekeeping staff pretending to be professionals. We need real interpreters for $1 billion negotiation. David's objection was sharper. I cannot allow housekeeping staff to represent our legal interests. This is career suicide. The corporate executives on the American side looked nervous about liability and irregular procedures. The atmosphere crackled with doubt and resistance. Then Tanaka spoke in English so everyone could understand. I trust Miss Williams more than any certified interpreter I have worked with. Her cultural understanding saved this morning's negotiations. I request her leadership for this session. His words carried the weight of $2.8 billion. Corporate executives deferred to his judgment. David Mitchell's objections reduced to uncomfortable mumbling. Keisha took her position at the head of the conference table, facing 20 video screens filled with skeptical Japanese executives. 90 minutes to prove that 3 years of invisibility had been preparation for this moment. The first challenge came immediately. A board member from Tokyo questioned American diversity policies, suggesting they prioritize political correctness over competence. Shh. His words carried subtle racism wrapped in business language. Keisha translated accurately while maintaining diplomatic balance. She explained American innovation culture versus Japanese precision culture, finding common ground between conflicting philosophies. But the real test came 30 minutes in, when an elderly board member from Osaka began speaking in heavy Kansai dialect regional Japanese that differed significantly from Tokyo standard. The certified interpreters exchanged panicked glances. One whispered urgently to his colleague, "I can't follow this dialect." But Keisha seamlessly switched linguistic gears, capturing not just the words, but the cultural weight behind them. The elderly executive was expressing concerns about employee loyalty and corporate traditions that couldn't survive direct translation. "He's worried about preserving the company's soul during expansion," she explained to the American team. "In Kansai culture, business relationships are generational. He needs assurance that growth won't destroy the human connections that built the company." The elderly board member's face brightened with recognition. Through Keisha, he and the American executives began bridging a gap that standard interpretation had left unbridgeable. The third crisis emerged during discussions of management structure. Japanese hierarchical systems clashed with American flat organizational models. Tension escalated as both sides defended their approaches. Keisha saw the impasse developing and made a critical decision. She proposed a hybrid structure that preserved Japanese respect for experience while incorporating American innovation flexibility. "What if we created cultural mentor partnerships?" she suggested during a brief pause. Senior Japanese executives paired with American innovators, sharing knowledge in both directions. Both cultures are learning from each other instead of one dominating the other. The room fell silent as both sides considered this unexpected solution. Then came the personal attack that could have destroyed everything. A Japanese board member made a subtle comment about American diversity experiments that implied concerns about lowering standards. The words stung, carrying the same prejudice Keisha had faced all day. Every eye in the room watched her reaction. Would she respond emotionally? Defend herself? Prove their doubts correct? Instead, she translated the comment accurately and professionally, then added, "In both American and Japanese cultures, excellence has many faces. Today's success comes from recognizing talent wherever it appears." Tanaka immediately corrected his colleague in firm Japanese, making clear that such attitudes had no place in modern business. Keisha gracefully translated his correction, de-escalating tension while establishing boundaries. The breakthrough came in the final 30 minutes. Both sides embraced Keisha's cultural exchange program proposal. Japanese executives are excited about learning American innovation techniques. Americans are eager to understand Japanese quality management. Her idea became the central selling point that transformed opposition into enthusiasm. When the final vote was called, 20 board members voted unanimously to proceed. But the victory belonged to more than just the deal. As American executives applauded and Japanese board members bowed respectfully through their video screens, something fundamental had shifted. David Mitchell was clapping despite himself. Jennifer's skepticism had crumbled into grudging respect. Corporate executives who had questioned her credentials were asking for her contact information. The certified interpreters approached her afterward with professional respect. "Your cultural knowledge is exceptional," the lead interpreter admitted. "You should consider formal certification." Hotel staff who had gathered outside the conference room erupted in cheers. The security guard who had watched her suspiciously for 3 years was smiling. Housekeeping colleagues who had worked beside her in invisible silence were crying with pride. But the most powerful moment came when Tanaka stood and formally addressed both American and Japanese executives. Today we witnessed something rare in international business. A bridge between cultures built by someone who understands both worlds. Miss Williams didn't just interpret our words. She interpreted our hearts. The woman who had been invisible for 3 years had become the architect of a $2.8 billion success. As the video screens went dark and the conference room emptied, Keisha sat alone for a moment in the leather chair at the head of the table. The same hands that had pushed cleaning carts now held contracts worth billions. But she knew this was just the beginning. The real work proving that today wasn't an anomaly, but a glimpse of what was possible, was about to begin. The invisible woman had become visible. Now she had to stay that way. The conference room had barely emptied when Tanaka rose from his chair with ceremonial purpose. In Japanese business culture, what happened next was unprecedented. "Before we conclude," he announced to the remaining American executives, "I must formally recognize the architect of today's success." He turned to face Keisha, his posture shifting into the formal stance reserved for the highest honors. "In Japan, we have a saying, 'The nail that stands out gets hammered down.' But sometimes that nail holds the entire structure together." His words carried across the marble lobby as hotel staff gathered. Housekeeping, front desk, maintenance, security. Word had spread through the building like wildfire. Their colleague, the invisible woman who cleaned their workplace, had just saved a billion-dollar deal. Keisha-san showed us that talent has no color, no uniform, no predetermined place. Today, she saved not just a business deal, but taught us about our own prejudices. Thornton stepped forward, still processing the magnitude of what had occurred. Effective immediately, Keisha Williams is promoted to International Cultural Services Coordinator. Salary increases to $52,000 annually, with full corporate benefits and tuition reimbursement for certification programs. The number represented more than money. It was validation that her intelligence had monetary value, that she was worth investing in. Jennifer stood in the back, her face a mixture of defeat and grudging acceptance. The woman she had dismissed as just housekeeping now outranked her in cultural importance to the hotel. David Mitchell had slipped away during the announcement, unwilling to witness the complete collapse of his assumptions. His transfer request to a different project would be approved within the week. He refused to work alongside someone whose success challenged his worldview. But for every person who resisted change, 3 others embraced it. Tanaka approached with a small wrapped package. "In my culture, we honor bridges between worlds with symbols of respect." He unwrapped a silk furoshikiai, traditional wrapping cloth used to carry precious items. "This belonged to my grandmother. She used it to carry her most valuable possessions when my family lost everything in the war. It represents the ability to protect and transport what matters most." Keisha accepted the gift with both hands, the proper Japanese protocol. But her response came from Ethiopian tradition. She invited him to share coffee in her neighborhood community center, the highest honor in her culture. The local business journal photographer captured the moment. Keisha standing between Tanaka and Thornton, no longer invisible, no longer dismissed. The image would spread across social media within hours. "Hotel worker becomes cultural ambassador," read the headline. The story went viral, shared by people who recognized themselves in Keisha's journey, who had felt invisible in their own workplaces. Interview requests poured in from local news stations. The story resonated beyond business. It touched anyone who had been underestimated, overlooked, or limited by others' assumptions. But the most meaningful recognition came from her colleagues. The housekeeping staff gathered in the break room that evening. Their usual dinner circle expanded to include Keisha's new office colleagues. Maria, who cleaned executive bathrooms, revealed she spoke fluent Portuguese and French. James from maintenance mentioned his accounting degree from Haiti. Thornton implemented the Hidden Talents Initiative within the week. Employee skill assessments revealed a multilingual workforce that had been hiding in plain sight. The hotel partnered with the local community college to provide certification courses and career advancement paths. 3 months later, Keisha's small office in the business center overlooked the same city view she had seen through windows she'd cleaned. Her desk held linguistic textbooks instead of cleaning supplies. Her computer showed correspondence with international clients instead of work schedules. The Meridian Grand became a model for hospitality industry workforce development. Keisha testified before the city council about immigrant workforce potential. Her TEDx talk, 5 Languages, 1 Dream, drew over 1 million views. But perhaps the most powerful transformation was visual. The same marble hallways where she had pushed cleaning carts now welcomed her as a professional. The security guard who had watched her with suspicion now greeted her by name. The guests who had once ignored her now sought her cultural expertise. Her mother visited on a Tuesday afternoon, dressed in her finest clothes. She stood in the executive lobby where her daughter now worked, tears streaming down her weathered face. "You did it, my baby," she whispered in Amharic. "You made them see." The Ethiopian Community Center displayed Keisha's business journal photo prominently. Local immigrant families brought their children to meet the woman who proved dreams come true. Her story became shorthand for possibility in a community that rarely saw success stories that looked like them. Tanaka's mentorship continued through monthly video calls. He recommended her to other international companies and opened doors that had been closed her entire life. The scholarship he provided would allow her to complete her bachelor's degree in international business. But success came with realistic limitations. Some guests still looked surprised to see a black woman in the business center. Occasional comments questioned whether she really deserved her position. The hospitality industry's transformation was gradual, often resistant. Jennifer remained at the hotel but was passed over for promotion twice. Her documented resistance to recognizing talent had consequences in a corporate culture increasingly focused on diversity and inclusion. The ripple effects spread beyond one hotel. Other hospitality companies began implementing skills recognition programs. The Bridge Builder Initiative provided scholarships for multilingual service workers across the industry. Keisha became a regular speaker at community colleges, sharing her story with students who looked like her younger self, brilliant, capable, but convinced the world had no place for their talents. Standing in her office 6 months later, reviewing applications for the Cultural Services internship program she had designed, Keisha reflected on the journey from invisible to indispensable. The same marble floors, the same city views, the same building. But everything had changed because one person had been willing to see beyond uniform to intelligence, beyond position to potential. Her worn multilingual dictionary now sat on a bookshelf next to business strategy texts. The letters from immigrant families she had helped were framed on her wall, reminders that success meant more than personal advancement. It meant opening doors for others to walk through. The photo from that first day, Keisha standing between Tanaka and Thornton, hung in the hotel's main lobby under the heading Employee Excellence Stories. Below it, a simple plaque read, "Talent recognizes no boundaries." But the real measure of change wasn't in plaques or photos. It was in the young Haitian maintenance worker who had enrolled in business classes, the Guatemalan housekeeper who had applied for the interpreter certification program, the Somali front desk clerk who had been promoted to cultural liaison. Keisha had become visible. Now she was making sure others could be seen too. 6 months later, Keisha Williams sat in her small but professional office, reviewing applications for the Cultural Services mentorship program she had designed. Through her window, the same Manhattan skyline stretched endlessly, the view she had once seen only while cleaning glass, now hers to contemplate as a professional. Her desk held a photograph from that transformative morning, herself standing between Tanaka and Thornton, no longer invisible. But more meaningful were the letters stacked beside it, from Maria in housekeeping, now enrolled in hospitality management, from James in maintenance, whose Haitian accounting degree finally mattered, from Ahmad, the Syrian doorman pursuing his engineering certification. The Meridian Grand had become a model for the hospitality industry's Hidden Talents initiative. Corporate executives toured monthly to study how recognizing existing employee skills increased both retention and customer satisfaction. International client bookings had increased 40% as word spread about the hotel's cultural competency. Keisha's transformation was measured in concrete changes. Her $52,000 salary allowed her family's first apartment without roommates. Her mother had quit her night cleaning job, finally able to rest her weathered hands. Her youngest sister had transferred to a 4-year university, dreams no longer limited by financial reality. But the real victory was systemic. The hotel industry's partnership with community colleges had created pathways for thousands of service workers. Keisha testified before congressional committees about immigrant workforce development. Her TED Talk, 5 Languages, One Dream, had sparked policy discussions in 12 states. Yet challenges remained constant reminders that change comes gradually. Some guests still expressed surprise at seeing a Black woman in the business center. Corporate executives occasionally prefaced introductions with subtle disclaimers about her unique background. Success required daily proof of competence that white colleagues never faced. Tanaka's mentorship continued through monthly video calls and quarterly visits. His recommendation had opened consulting opportunities with Fortune 500 companies expanding internationally. The letter of recommendation he wrote had helped her gain acceptance to Columbia's executive MBA program. "Success has made you visible," he reminded her during their last call. "Now use that visibility to change the system." The community impact rippled beyond corporate boardrooms. Ethiopian families brought their children to meet the woman who proved it possible. Local immigrant advocacy groups cited Keisha's story in policy proposals. Community college enrollment among service workers had increased 300% citywide. But perhaps the most powerful change was personal. Standing in the executive bathroom where she had once questioned her worth, Keisha now saw unlimited potential reflected back. The same hands that had held mops now signed consulting contracts. The mind that had been dismissed now shaped international business strategies. Her worn, multilingual dictionary sat on a bookshelf beside Harvard Business Review subscriptions and international law textbooks. The letters from immigrant families she had helped were framed as reminders that individual success must serve collective advancement. The transformation wasn't just hers. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt invisible in their workplace, underestimated because of their accent, their address, or their uniform. Maria had received her hospitality management certification and supervised the housekeeping department's new multilingual guest services program. James had been promoted to facilities coordinator, his engineering expertise finally recognized. The Syrian doorman had started part-time classes in structural engineering. Jennifer Hayes had left the Meridian Grand after being passed over for promotion twice. Her documented resistance to recognizing talent had consequences in a corporate culture increasingly focused on inclusion. David Mitchell had requested transfer to a different project, unwilling to adapt to a workplace where competence mattered more than assumptions. But for every person who resisted change, 10 others embraced the possibility of seeing talent in unexpected places. Keisha's story spread because it reflected universal experiences, being overlooked, underestimated, reduced to surfaces rather than recognized for depth. The comment sections overflowed with similar stories. "I see myself in this. This happened to me." We all have hidden talents waiting for recognition. Next time you encounter someone in a service role, remember Keisha's story. The person serving your coffee, cleaning your office, or delivering your food might be the bridge to solving tomorrow's biggest challenges. Take one moment this week to really see someone who might feel invisible. Learn their name. Ask about their story. Support businesses that recognize diverse talents in all roles. Vote for policies that create pathways for advancement regardless of starting position. Because talent doesn't wear a uniform, but opportunity often does. The woman who was invisible for 3 years had become a beacon for others still waiting to be seen. Her success wasn't just personal, it was proof that when we look beyond assumptions, we discover solutions hiding in plain sight. Change starts with recognition. Recognition starts with you.